Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Mako. Welcome back. Today we have Vittorio Addona, John Gabrosek, and Lynne Seymour. John is a professor in the Department of Statistics at Grand Valley State University in Allendale, Michigan. John was the editor of the Journal of Statistics Education 2010 to 2012. He has worked with numerous undergraduates on research being taught, having taught the project-based statistical consulting course numerous times. Lynne Seymour is an associate professor in the Department of Statistics at the University of Georgia, whose research focuses on climatological and environmental problems. She has been directing undergraduate research in the capstone course for statistics majors for several years. Vittorio Addona is a professor in the Department of Mathematics, Statistics, and Computer Science at Macalester College, a small private liberal arts college located in St. Paul, Minnesota. His research interests are primarily in medical applications of statistics and sports analytics. He has mentored numerous undergraduate research students and has several peer-reviewed publications with undergraduate co-authors. They are here to talk to us about engaging students through statistical research. This is a panel discussion, so take it away.
Hi, this is John. I'm going to speak first, just give you a little brief introduction to where I'm coming from on this. And that is that I teach at Grand Valley State University. It's a school of about 24,000 students in and around Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'll be sort of coming to this discussion from the lens of teaching a statistical consulting course, which has a client-based project that the students work on throughout the semester. You may hear in the background, about 60 seconds before we started, my neighbor decided it's the perfect time to mow the grass.
I'm Lynne Seymour. I'm at the University of Georgia, which is an R1 institution with about 36,000 students. Located in Athens, Georgia. The capstone course that I'm involved in is a year-long experiential learning and communication intensive course where they get to work directly with stakeholders solving some of their problems.
Hi, and my name is Vittorio. Some of you know I also go by Victor. I'm happy to use either. As Megan mentioned, I have mentored several undergraduate research summer students. I do also have experience teaching sort of our upper level capstone courses, and the other way I've interacted with undergraduate research is as a co-chair for US Proc and EUSR, and maybe I'll say a little bit more about that a little later. You can click on the links if you like, but basically these are national well, in the case of US Proc, a national paper competition where undergraduates can submit their work and have it judged, and EUSR is an e-conference for undergraduates. And then, as Megan mentioned, I'm at a small liberal arts school, 2,000 undergraduates. Hopefully that gives a little context to the comments each of us makes. And as you go through, if you want to type in questions and you want one specific panelist to answer, just make a note of that in your question. Otherwise, one of us will just jump in as we see fit.
So I'm going to kind of get the ball rolling. What we're going to do today is we have 5 discussion topics that 2 people will each discuss a little bit. And then, of course, we'll take questions at the end. So the first topic is, if faculty want to engage in research with undergraduates, how do they get started? And how can faculty generate topic ideas for research projects? So I don't really expect you to read that little email at the top, but one way that in the class that I teach on statistical consulting, as I mentioned, the students have a client project that they work on throughout the semester, and I help them solicit projects. So a lot of these projects come from faculty and staff across the university. Some of them I kind of leverage past relationships with faculty and staff members to generate projects that way. Our statistical consulting center will help sort of generate projects. And my wife works in the nonprofit industry around Grand Valley, so I have some connections there too. But I want to talk just a little bit about the process we kind of have to use at Grand Valley, and it might be similar for other places, for how you reach out to other faculty. So you might think, I can just send an email to all the faculty. Not allowed to do that at Grand Valley, at least. So there's actually quite a few layers that we have to go through for that. First, I have to get my unit head approval, and that's sort of a rubber stamp. That's easy to get because he knows what the email's about. Then it has to go to the dean. And you might imagine that I have to convince the dean every year. He sort of forgets what this email is about. And then when the dean gives the okay, it then goes to Grand Valley's provost. Provost office has to give it the okay. They then direct me to someone in IT who provides me with a list. And I have to say, well, who on this list should get the email and who should, what categories of Grand Valley faculty and staff. And then finally the email goes out. Well, one sort of interesting.
John, could you do me a favor and lean forward just a little closer to the mic?
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
What is this better, Megan?
Yes, that's much better. Thanks.
Okay. So one thing that's sort of interesting is that a lot of the projects that I've generated are not projects necessarily from faculty members. We have quite a few projects from staff or from units within Grand Valley that are not academic units. So I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. So go ahead, Victor, to the next slide.
Okay, so I wanted to say a little bit about both the sort of getting started piece of this question and then the generating topics piece. In terms of getting started, one of the things I often, the first thing I kind of think about is, you know, getting students funded. That's really important to them. Obviously, if you've got external funding sources, that's fantastic. That's sort of I think a pretty high barrier though, or a high bar to hold people to. Looking to internal sources of funding on your campus is something that perhaps seems obvious, but it's something you need to actively engage in, talk to your chair and your colleagues about that. That aside, I think even coming down a step and inquiring about teaching sort of seminar style, small research courses is a way of getting access to good, interested students and giving them compensation via academic credit. Honors projects are another way of kind of doing this. And also simultaneously giving faculty members, compensating them in a way via teaching credit. So that's always, those are sort of the things I think I've been quite successful at getting students into classes that way. It also serves as a nice way to see who the really wonderful, engaged students are. And you can follow up on those research courses with those really excellent students. In terms of generating topics, I often hear people, you know, bemoaning this, and it is a hard thing to do. I do think some of that needs to be partly with guidance offloaded to the students. I think the generation of topics is part of the research process, and it allows for really excellent teaching moments. One thing I've noticed over the years is students will often come with ill-posed questions or fantastic questions that are unanswerable, or fantastic questions where the data is impossible to get or doesn't exist. And the data they have don't answer the question they want to answer, and having them think through that whole process is really excellent. It's a great learning experience for them. So getting them involved in that. So I feel like faculty maybe shouldn't feel, they should have obviously guide the students through that topic generation process, but it is interesting to have the students do some of that. I have a bullet on there that talks about the creativity involved in research, which I really like to talk to my students about, because when they think about research, the word creativity does not come to mind to them. And I really think it is a creative process. Thinking about what are you going to measure? Do you have access to a direct measurement? What are types of proxy measures you might want to use, and getting creative in those ways is a great teaching tool also. So for now, I will, of course, there's lots more that could be said, but in the interest of time, I will move on. Our second question, our second discussion topic, are undergraduates ready to complete meaningful research projects? How do we prepare undergraduates to conduct impactful research? So I'll take the lead on this one, I guess. So in terms of our undergraduates ready for research, I think the reason this very frequently comes up amongst faculty is they're thinking about ready for a certain kind of research, maybe the kind of research they did in graduate school. And I wanted to point out, emphasize that, ready means really very, very, very different things to different people and to different students at different levels. What it means for an intro student to be ready is extremely different than a senior major. For an intro student, ready could mean collecting their own data, posing a good question, as I said, conducting a sound analysis. It doesn't have to be a fancy thing, doing a survey, thinking about experimental design. So that's, that could be ready for an intro student. We might expect more from an advanced student, maybe focusing on the originality of their research question as opposed to the sort of theorem proof that we're used to from our own graduate school experience. I also, wanted to point out that, again, ready to produce what? And obviously, if you can get a traditional peer-reviewed paper, that's fantastic, but that's not the only kind of product you can produce. And so, doing a poster presentation or a talk at a conference or submitting a paper to an external competition, those are all forms of products that the students can buy into. It holds them accountable to an external entity, which I think is super important. So that, rethinking about what we mean by ready, I think is an important thing, and adjusting that to the level of the student. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is maybe our undergraduates ready for research is not quite the right question, at least not for all students, because after all, I feel like it's part of our job to get them ready, to make them ready. And that might be a hard task. I'm thinking mostly of intro students, working with them, getting them to understand the importance of organization, reproducibility, data sanctity, all of those things. That will, that's sort of a payment to ourselves when those students go on to become upper division students. They will be much more ready. And so that's, that's part of our job to get them to that point. And we're paying in for a sort of a future benefit. I think I'll probably stop there and turn it over to John.
So I was joking with Lynne and Victor that when we got to this second question, we could just answer it no, and then we could stop the panel discussion. But we thought, no, we probably should answer this yes. So what I wanted to do is just sort of highlight some projects that some of my students have done in the past 10 years in this client-based project course. So you can see four different ones there. Student Scholars Day is an internal Grand Valley conference where students from across the university can present in a conference setting their research, or it might be an artistic endeavor, or they might play music. So lots of different avenues for scholarly creative content. So you can see there was this is just a few impacts of ethical education on hospital employees. So that was a nurse practitioner who was a graduate student who needed some assistance with a couple of surveys she did. And she was looking at, as the title says, what role does ethics play and does it impact what the nurse does? The second one, comprehensive measures of mobility in urban research. So that was with a faculty member at Grand Valley I think in geography department. So you can see there's faculty members, graduate students that we solicit projects from. A nonprofit one was dog breeding at Paws with a Cause. So Paws with a Cause is an organization that trains assistance dogs, and they breed their own dogs for certain traits and characteristics. And so they never really looked at their data as to what traits and characteristics are being bred successfully and which ones aren't. And so this group dealt with that. And then we had one actually with a faculty member who is an adjunct in criminal justice, whose day job is works for the Social Security Administration as an investigator. And so these students actually created, they were sort of data science type students. They created an interface where you could put in phone records, and phone records, this phone record set had like 100,000 phone calls. And you could then query it to see what are the top 10 calls, numbers that are called most often, what time of the day are these things called. So all of those are projects that undergraduate students are able to do. And I think a large part of being successful with undergraduates is you need to set out good expectations. And as Victor said, they don't all have to be theoretical type projects. And in our course, really all the projects are survey construction, data analysis, data visualization types of projects. And those, I think, students can do a really good job of contributing to. I'm going to go ahead and let Lynne take it from there, and she's going to kind of transition us into the third topic.
All right, our third discussion topic is what are the benefits and joys and barriers and struggles of engaging undergraduates in research? And honestly, sometimes that's all the same topic. Advance, please. Well, among the benefits and joys, students are helping to solve problems that matter in some sense. In the capstone course, we bring in not just researchers from around campus, but we'll also bring in some UGA offices, such as the advisement office, or even the science library. We've brought in local businesses, for example, a local brewery. We often use the government, particularly the Water Conservation Office. And we've also engaged nonprofits like our local animal shelter or our local suicide prevention groups. These students will experience the power of data analysis firsthand, and it's really satisfying to watch them mature from students to practitioners. It's almost like they wake up, and it's amazing. Getting them to think critically about data and results is both a benefit and a joy, and a barrier and a struggle. We've been trying to move them away from the significance level of 5% and also from the fail to reject language that they almost learn by rote in some of their other courses. Among the barriers and struggles, students sometimes have trouble staying focused on the question. And I remember when I was very first dealing with data, I would get into a data set and go down my own little rabbit hole and not answer the question of the person who brought me the data. But keeping them focused on that question and keeping the client informed, forming a relationship with the client so that they're actually feeling more ownership of the problem can sometimes be a little bit of a struggle. Of course, we have students that are unmotivated or want an easy way out, and I'm not sure how to solve that one other than trying to get them excited about the problem at hand. We also have problems with our clients sometimes who promise us data and they can't pull through. More rarely, but definitely on a couple of occasions, we've had clients ghost us. Often researchers will bring us old data and they just don't care about it anymore when they dump it off into our laps.
So I'll try to be brief. I know we've got some time constraints here. So I'll start with very quickly what has been a barrier for me, or at least what I've perceived as a barrier or a challenge is the monetary funding of students, in particular, if I'm thinking about summer research students. it's not that I haven't been able to do it, but I feel like this is a challenge that I revisit and re-tackle every year. And I have to get creative. Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's external, sometimes it's, co-advising with faculty members across disciplines and getting them, using their funding sources. So it's just been a piecemeal solution for me, and I wish I didn't have to think about it, but I do constantly have to revisit this issue. Much more joyful on the, in terms of the work, supervising these students has really become perhaps the most fulfilling part of, or at least near the top of the most fulfilling parts of my job. I really feel like I'm inspiring the next generation of statisticians. We send out a lot of students who go out and get really great jobs, and that's great, but I also have started to notice that we're producing the sort of next generation of thought leaders, and that's a different kind of group that I didn't see us producing when I first started teaching here. And so that's been really a wonderful joy for me so far in my career. I think I'll stop there just to save us a little bit of time and turn it over to Lynn.
Discussion topic number 4 is how can faculty teach the principles of good communication as part of the essential toolbox of research skills? Okay, advance. So UGA kind of helps us out this way by having a writing intensive program. We have courses that are specially designated as writing intensive. They're marked with a W on the students' transcripts. And being part of this program means we get funding for dedicated TAs, and these TAs get special training to coach writing in these courses. We actually expand the whole writing intensive idea to be communication intensive. Our students are giving presentations often throughout the whole semester or even throughout the whole year. At the end of the year, they're giving a poster session for the whole department, and they're expected to produce a professional written report for the client. In order to accomplish this, we have them do all kinds of exercises, many of them early and often. We start very lighthearted so they will relax. We'll do some very brief public speaking, like maybe choose some people at random and tell a good clean joke. Sometimes we will combine speaking and writing together, like having them write an excuse and tell the class about it, where they make up the excuse. We have them do peer reviews. We have them explain it to grandma, and we even have them do tweets like they do for ASA or JSM these days.
I'm actually going to go ahead and sort of just skip through this. Victor, can you go to the next slide? I'm going to make sure that we get a little audience participation. What I'd like you to do is use the chat feature. We're going to give you 30 to 45 seconds to collect your thoughts and then sort of go into the chat feature. Go ahead to the next slide, Victor. And what we want you to discuss is topic 5, because we thought this is a really hard topic to come up with something good on. Let's make sure we engage the community. So how can we engage diverse populations in undergraduate research? What are some obstacles? If you have a success story that you want to share, please do that. So take 30 to 45 seconds, and then we'll sort of be looking at the chat. And as you're doing that, Lynn will speak for just a little bit about this topic from her perspective, and then we'll kind of look through the chat.
Well, at UGA, the year-long statistics capstone course is required of all of our majors, and it's taken in their senior year. So really, the class itself is only diverse as diverse as our major is. And of course, the major is increasing in popularity as statistics does overall. But UGA itself does have some diversity issues. For example, the university is about 8.5% African American when the state is far more than that. And the freshman class itself, it's 55% from Metro Atlanta. And of course, there are some socioeconomic diversity issues as well. We don't have a lot of rural students. A little point of pride, in this last cohort of capstone students, we had about 45 students that included diversity not only over races and ethnicities, but also over age and gender identities, and even had a first-year college student among them, or a first-generation college student, rather. A bonus, though, with having a capstone course like this is sometimes clients will bring data and questions that include diversity issues. In particular, one I remember, we had a data set from the Athens Housing Authority, and the students were surprised to find that 80% of the occupants of public housing were on disability, and that sort of served to dispel a lot of stereotypes.
So I'm going to read off one of these, and then Victor will read one, and then we'll kind of go to just general Q&A. So this one I found really interesting. It says, I have found that mentioning research early in statistics courses is helpful, starting in intro stat. One of the biggest barriers is that students can view research as something remote, huge, and terrifying. Once we show them examples of what research can be, some students get the, oh, I can do that perspective, and are more willing to try joining our research course.
I'll just read one more. I know we're running out of time, but just very quickly, one attendee said that they have many students from at-risk populations, minority populations, non-native English speakers, and they said what's been helpful for them in ensuring success on project has been keeping in mind those struggles that those students are facing in their lives.
So before we go to Q&A, we have 3 additional topics that we thought we would weigh in on. And so we've added some content to these. I think it'll be posted on the cause site, and you just click on a link, and you'll see a short video on each of those 3 questions. And then below that video and a separate slide, there'll be some links to resources that you might avail yourself of. So Megan, I think we're ready for Q&A.
Wonderful. Great that you have continuing ideas for them to take a look at. So one of the questions that we got was, what strategies do you use with students for emphasizing creativity and doing research?
Victor, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned that word, and I think so I'm trying to think, it's hard to think of a specific example on the spot, but I guess I'm coming up against this kind of attitude that sometimes students will come up with a question that they're really interested in, but they think, well, their immediate attitude is, but I can't answer that because the ideal perfect data is not available. And I point them to lots of papers where researchers say that kind of thing, where here's the question we want to answer. The perfect thing is not available, but maybe we could come at this from this other sort of angle. And yes, it's not perfect, and here are the limitations, but an attempted approximate, you know, the famous quote of an approximate answer to the right question is better than an exact answer to a not a valuable question. So I'd rather they stay on the question they like and find a way to attack it.
Trying to get them to stop thinking about the exact right answer that they're used to for a homework problem. Yeah, great. So another question is, in my own field of genetics, having domain-specific knowledge is critical to developing good research questions. Has anyone had experience generating collaborative projects with 2 or more students from different departments? Say a student who is majoring or minoring in statistics and another student who is majoring or minoring in a domain-specific area.
So I'll speak a little bit on that. So I haven't done that necessarily with 2 different students, although when I have projects, usually my students work in teams of 2 or 2 student consultants on a client project, and I'll try to balance what the students' interests are. So if a project is a biology project with a biology faculty member, then I'll try to find a student which has some bio background to be part of that team. So a lot of what the sort of student learning is in this client project they spend a lot of time trying to understand what the domain knowledge is from the faculty member. And it's helpful if they already have a little background in that, but it's not actually necessary. But I think it really opens the students' eyes to see they need to communicate the statistical information in a way that a non-statistician can understand, and that non-statistician needs to communicate the domain knowledge in a way the statistician can understand. And students sometimes find it hard to stop a faculty member and say, I don't understand that. They find that really hard because I think there's a power, you know, a little bit of a power difference there. So I think getting them used to that and being able to say, I'm comfortable with saying I don't understand or I don't know something. I think that's a kind of a key thing.
And such a wonderful life skill to learn as well. And unfortunately, we are out of time for today. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation.